I stared at the divorce papers in my hands, the weight of them far heavier than the few sheets of paper they actually were. My husband Devon's words echoed in my ears, each syllable a dagger to my heart. "You've always been a burden," he said, his voice as cold as the February wind howling outside our bedroom window. "Now that you can't give me children, I'm done with you." I looked up at him, searching for any hint of the man I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. All I saw was a stranger, his face twisted with disdain. "Devon, please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm having surgery tomorrow. They don't know if it's cancer yet. How can you do this now?" He scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "That's exactly why I'm doing this now, Evie. I can't be tied to a sick wife. What about my future? My legacy?" The room spun around me, and I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. "Your legacy? What about our vows? In sickness and in health, remember?" Devon's laugh was bitter. "Wake up, Evie. Those were just words. This is real life." A knock at the door interrupted us. "Everything all right in there?" It was Miriam, Devon's mother. Of course she was hovering nearby, probably gleeful at the thought of finally getting rid of me. "It's fine, Mother," Devon called out. He turned back to me, his eyes cold. "Sign the papers, Evie. Make this easy on both of us." I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal. "Both of us? You mean easy for you, don't you?" He shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. "Think about it. You've never fit in here. My parents have always seen you as less than. This is your chance for a clean break." The truth of his words stung, but I couldn't deny them. Memories of snide comments, backhanded compliments, and cold shoulders from Miriam and Stanley flashed through my mind. I'd endured it all, thinking Devon was worth it. How wrong I'd been. "I need time to think," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Devon's eyes narrowed. "You have until morning. I want those papers signed before you leave for the hospital." With that, he turned and left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the damning papers. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at nothing. The buzz of my phone finally broke through my daze. It was my mother, Henrietta. "Evie? Sweetheart, are you there?" I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, Mom." "Oh, honey, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" The dam broke. Through sobs, I told her everything. The papers, Devon's cruel words, the impending surgery. She listened, her fury growing with each word. "You've been nothing but a maid to them," she said, her voice laced with anger. "I knew that boy was no good, but this is beyond the pale." "Mom, I don't know what to do," I admitted, feeling lost. "You listen to me, Evelyn Harper," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "You are strong. You are brave, and you do not need that sorry excuse for a man or his horrible parents. Your father and I are on our way. We'll be there first thing in the morning to take you to the hospital." I felt a small spark of warmth in my chest. "Thanks, Mom." After we hung up, I looked at the divorce papers again. Part of me wanted to rip them to shreds, to fight for the life I thought I had. But a smaller, growing part whispered that maybe this was an opportunity, a chance to reclaim myself. With a shaky hand, I reached for a pen. As I signed my name, I made a silent vow. I would get through this surgery. I would survive. And I would build a life so beautiful, so full of love and joy, that Devon and his family would regret ever letting me go. I placed the signed papers on Devon's pillow and lay down, closing my eyes. Tomorrow would bring challenges, pain, and uncertainty. But for the first time in years, it would also bring the promise of freedom. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room made everything look sickly and unreal. I sat between my parents, their presence a comforting shield against the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "Evelyn Harper?" A nurse called out, her voice cutting through the quiet murmur of the room. I stood on shaky legs, my mother's hand firmly grasping mine. "That's me." As we followed the nurse, my father's deep voice rumbled behind us. "We're right here with you, sweetheart. You're not alone." Those words, so simple yet so powerful, nearly broke me. I blinked back tears, determined to stay strong. The pre-op room was cold, both in temperature and atmosphere. As I changed into the thin hospital gown, my mind drifted back to the countless times I'd felt just as exposed and vulnerable in my own home. "Remember when you first moved in with Devon and his parents?" My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I should have spoken up then. I sighed, settling onto the narrow bed. Mom, please, not now. But Henrietta Harper was not one to be silenced. No, Evie, you need to hear this. You've been nothing but a maid to them. All these years, cooking, cleaning, trying to please those people who never appreciated you. Her words unleashed a flood of memories. Miriam's critical eyes following my every move as I dusted her precious antiques. Stanley's dismissive grunt when I'd served dinner, no matter how perfectly prepared. And Devon, always siding with his parents, never standing up for me. I thought if I just tried harder, they'd accept me, I whispered, the truth of it hitting me anew. My father's hand on my shoulder startled me. You shouldn't have had to try at all, honey. A real family loves you for who you are. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dr. Patel entered, her kind eyes crinkling as she smiled. Ready, Evelyn? I took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. As they wheeled me towards the operating room, a commotion in the hallway caught my attention. My heart lurched as I recognized Devon's voice. I'm her husband. I have a right to be here. Dr. Patel frowned. Is there a problem, Evelyn? I closed my eyes, steeling myself. That man is not my husband anymore. Please don't let him in. The doctor nodded, signaling to a nearby security guard. As they pushed me through the double doors, I caught a glimpse of Devon's face, a mix of anger and something else. Regret, perhaps? The anesthesia began to take effect, and as I drifted off, I found myself hoping. Not for reconciliation, but for the strength to finally break free. When I woke, groggy and sore, my parents were there, their faces a mix of relief and concern. How did it go? I croaked, my throat dry. My mother's eyes welled up. Dr. Patel said they got it all, sweetheart. No cancer. The relief was overwhelming, but as I fully regained consciousness, so did the memories of everything else. Devon? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. My father's face hardened. Gone. Security escorted him out, but Evie, his mother, is here. She's demanding to see you. I felt a flash of panic, quickly replaced by a surge of anger. After everything they'd put me through, they still thought they had the right to be here? Tell her to leave, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I don't want to see any of them ever again. My mother squeezed my hand. That's my girl. As my parents left to deal with Miriam, I lay back, staring at the ceiling. The physical battle might be over, but I knew the emotional one was just beginning. For the first time in years, though, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was alive, cancer-free, and finally free from the shackles of a loveless marriage. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. No more trying to please people who could never be satisfied. No more sacrificing my happiness for others. It was time to rediscover who Evelyn Harper really was beyond being Devon's wife or Miriam and Stanley's daughter-in-law. As I drifted off to sleep again, I made a silent promise to myself. This was my second chance at life, and I wouldn't waste it. The gentle hum of my parents' house wrapped around me like a warm blanket. After weeks in the sterile hospital environment, being here felt like a breath of fresh air. But as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills before me, that comfort quickly evaporated. You don't need him, Evie. You have us, my father, Paul, said, squeezing my hand. His weathered face creased with concern. I managed a weak smile. I know, Dad, but I can't keep relying on you and Mom forever. These medical bills, they're astronomical. My mother, Henrietta, bustled in with a steaming mug of tea. Nonsense, sweetheart. We're your parents. This is what we're here for. As grateful as I was, a familiar feeling of inadequacy crept in. I was 35, divorced, and living with my parents. This wasn't how I'd imagined my life would turn out. I need to get back to work, I declared, more to myself than to them. My mother's brow furrowed. Evie, you're still recovering. There's no rush. A sharp knock at the door cut her off. We exchanged puzzled glances. We weren't expecting anyone. My father went to answer it, and I heard muffled voices. Then, Evie, it's for you. Curious, I made my way to the door. My heart dropped when I saw who was standing there. Miriam Caldwell, my former mother-in-law, looked smaller than I remembered. Her usually impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled, and her eyes were red-rimmed. Evelyn, she said, her voice wavering. May I come in? Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door in her face, but something in her demeanor made me hesitate. 5 minutes, I said coldly, stepping aside. We settled in the living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. My parents hovered nearby, ready to intervene if needed. Miriam cleared her throat. I owe you an apology, Evelyn. The way we treated you, it was unforgivable. I stared at her, speechless. In all the years I'd known her, I'd never heard Miriam apologize for anything. She continued, her voice thick with emotion. Devin told us what he did, how he left you when you needed him most. I'm ashamed of him, and I'm ashamed of myself for raising a son who could be so cruel. Part of me wanted to lash out, to unleash years of pent-up hurt and anger. But looking at this broken woman before me, I felt an unexpected twinge of pity. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Miriam's eyes met mine, because I realized how wrong we were, and because I need your help. I let out a bitter laugh. My help? After everything you put me through? It's Stanley, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He's sick, cancer. The doctors say it's advanced. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had made my life miserable for years was now facing the very thing I had just overcome. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, surprised to find I meant it, but I don't see how I can help. Miriam wrung her hands. You're the strongest person I know, Evelyn. The way you've handled everything, I thought maybe you could talk to him. Help him find the courage to fight. I sat there, stunned. The woman who had once told me I wasn't good enough for her son was now calling me strong. Asking for my help, my mother's voice cut through my thoughts. I think you should leave now, Miriam. Evie needs her rest. As my father showed Miriam out, I remained rooted to the spot, my mind whirling. Part of me wanted to help, to be the bigger person. But another part, a louder part, screamed that I owed these people nothing. What are you thinking, sweetheart? My mother asked gently. I looked up at her, feeling more conflicted than ever. I don't know, Mom. I really don't know. As I headed to my room, my father's words echoed in my head. You don't need him, Evie. You have us. He was right. I had their love and support. But now I faced a choice that would test the limits of my compassion and my newfound strength. Could I find it in myself to help the very people who had hurt me so deeply? Or was it time to finally, truly move on? The familiar hum of the office felt both comforting and strange as I stepped off the elevator. It had been months since I'd last been here, yet it felt like a lifetime ago. Evie. Fiona's excited voice cut through the quiet buzz of the morning. She rushed over, enveloping me in a warm hug. You look great, stronger than ever. I smiled, grateful for her enthusiasm. Thanks, Fee. It's good to be back. As we walked to my desk, I couldn't help but notice the sidelong glances and hushed whispers from my coworkers. News of my divorce and health struggles had clearly made the rounds. Don't mind them, Fiona said, sensing my discomfort. They're just glad you're okay. I nodded, trying to shake off the feeling of being under a microscope. So, what have I missed? Fiona's face lit up. Oh, you won't believe it. Remember that big account we were trying to land before you left? Well, as she filled me in on office gossip and project updates, I felt a sense of normalcy returning. This was my world where I was valued for my skills and contributions, not judged by my ability to please a demanding husband and in-laws. But that feeling was short-lived. As I settled into my chair, my boss, Mr. Thornton, appeared at my desk. Evelyn, a word in my office, please. Fiona shot me a concerned look as I followed him. Once inside, he gestured for me to sit. First, let me say how glad we are to have you back, he began, his tone oddly formal. However, there have been some changes while you were away. My stomach dropped. Changes? He cleared his throat. We've had to reassign some of your major accounts. Given your extended absence and the uncertain nature of your return, it was necessary for the company's stability. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Those accounts had been mine for years. I'd built relationships, nurtured deals, poured my heart into them. But, sir, I'm back now. Surely I can. He held up a hand. I'm afraid the decisions have been made. We'll be easing you back in with smaller projects for now. As I left his office, my mind reeled. It felt like another betrayal, another piece of my identity stripped away. Fiona was waiting, her face etched with concern. What happened? I shook my head, unable to form words. She guided me to the break room, away from prying eyes. They took my accounts, I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Fiona's eyes widened. All of them? But that's not fair. You've been through hell, Evie. They can't punish you for that. Her indignation sparked something in me. She was right. I'd fought cancer, survived a divorce, and reclaimed my life. I wouldn't let this setback define me. You know what? I said, straightening my spine. I'm going to prove to them that I'm still the best they've got. Fiona grinned. That's the Evie I know, and I've got just the thing to help. She told me about a new potential client, a startup with huge growth potential. It was risky, but if we landed it, it could be bigger than all my old accounts combined. It's a long shot, she warned, but if anyone can do it, it's you. I felt a surge of determination. This was my chance to redefine myself, to show everyone, including myself, what I was truly capable of. As we headed back to our desks, Fiona nudged me. Oh, and there's a company mixer next week to woo some of these new clients. You should come. It'll be good for you to get out there. I hesitated. The thought of putting myself out there socially was daunting, but I knew she was right. It was time to step out of my comfort zone. Count me in, I said, surprising myself with my enthusiasm. That evening, as I recounted the day's events to my parents over dinner, I realized something. For the first time in years, I was excited about the future. There were challenges ahead, yes, but also opportunities, and I was ready to face them head on. I'm proud of you, sweetheart, my father said, his eyes misty. You're finding your strength again. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. I am, Dad, and you know what? It feels pretty damn good. The company mixer buzzed with energy, a sea of unfamiliar faces and polite small talk. I smoothed my dress nervously, feeling out of place. Fiona had convinced me to wear something bolder than my usual attire, insisting it would boost my confidence. You've got this, Evie, Fiona whispered, squeezing my arm before disappearing into the crowd. I took a deep breath and made my way to the bar, determined to mingle and hopefully connect with potential clients. As I waited for my drink, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Evie? Evelyn Harper, is that you? I turned, my heart skipping a beat as I recognized the man approaching me. Preston? Preston Bowen? His warm smile hadn't changed since college. I can't believe it. How long has it been? Too long, I replied, surprised by the genuine joy I felt seeing him. We fell into easy conversation, catching up on the years that had passed. Preston was now a successful architect, his eyes lighting up as he talked about his latest projects. What about you, Evie? Still conquering the business world? I hesitated, unsure how to answer. It's complicated. I've had some setbacks recently. Preston's expression softened. I heard about your divorce. I'm so sorry. Something in his tone made me look up. There was no pity in his eyes, just genuine concern and something else I couldn't quite place. Evie, I've been thinking a lot about you, he said quietly. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. My blood ran cold as I recognized the voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. Where is she? Where's my wife? Devon stumbled into view, his eyes wild and unfocused. He'd clearly been drinking. Ex-wife, I muttered, my momentary happiness evaporating. Preston stepped closer, protectively. Do you want me to handle this? I shook my head, steeling myself. No, I need to do this myself. As I approached Devon, the crowd parted, all eyes on us. I could feel the weight of their stares, the whispers already starting. Devon, what are you doing here? I kept my voice low, trying to avoid a scene. He grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. I made a mistake, Evie. I want us back, he pleaded, his voice cracking. The smell of alcohol on his breath made me recoil. You're drunk, Devon. Go home. Not without you, he insisted, his voice rising. I was wrong. I need you. I felt a surge of anger, months of pain and resentment bubbling to the surface. Need me? You left me when I needed you most. You called me a burden. The room had gone silent, all pretense of polite disinterest abandoned as our private drama played out publicly. Devon's face crumpled. I'm sorry. Please, Evie, give me another chance. For a moment, a tiny part of me wavered. This was the man I'd loved, the life I'd known. But then I remembered the coldness in his eyes as he handed me those divorce papers, the years of feeling inadequate and unloved. No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We're done, Devon, for good. As security arrived to escort him out, I turned to find Preston watching me, a mix of concern and admiration on his face. Are you okay? He asked softly. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. I will be. As the party reluctantly resumed around us, Preston gently touched my arm. Let me take you home. We can talk if you want, or not. Whatever you need. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in years. I saw kindness, understanding, and something that looked a lot like love. It terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure. In that moment, I faced a choice. I could retreat, protect my battered heart from any possibility of future pain, or I could take a chance, open myself up to the potential for happiness again. Actually, I said, surprising myself, I'd love to get a coffee and talk, if you're free. Preston's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. For you, Evie? Always. As we left the party together, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it might lead. The weeks following the company mixer had been a whirlwind. Preston and I had been spending more time together, rekindling a connection I'd forgotten was possible. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and appreciated. But as I stood outside my apartment building, staring at the unexpected visitors before me, that newfound happiness threatened to crumble. "Evelyn, dear, we need to talk," Miriam Caldwell said, her usually imperious tone softened with what sounded like genuine remorse. Beside her, Stanley looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. My heart raced as I considered turning them away. But curiosity got the better of me. "Come in," I said curtly, leading them to my small living room. As we sat, an awkward silence fell. Finally, Stanley cleared his throat. "Evelyn, we owe you an apology." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. In all the years I'd known them, the Caldwells had never apologized for anything. Miriam leaned forward, her eyes glistening. "We were wrong about you, dear. The way we treated you, it was unforgivable." Their words, so long wished for, now felt hollow. Where was this remorse when I was fighting cancer, when their son abandoned me at my lowest? "Why now?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Stanley shifted uncomfortably. "Devon, he's in trouble. He's been drinking, lost his job. He needs help, and he needs you." And there it was, the real reason for their visit. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "But I don't see how I can help." Miriam reached for my hand, which I instinctively pulled away. "You were always his rock, Evelyn. If anyone can bring him back, it's you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "His rock? He left me when I needed him most, called me a burden." "We know," Stanley said, his voice heavy with shame, "and we encouraged him. We were wrong, so wrong." As they continued their pleas, my mind raced. Part of me, the part that had spent years trying to please these people, wanted to help, but a stronger, wiser part knew better. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Preston. "Can't wait for dinner tonight. You make me happier than I've ever been." In that moment, everything crystallized. I stood, my decision made. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm. "I truly am. But I can't help you or Devon. That chapter of my life is closed." Miriam's face crumpled. "But he loves you. He made a mistake." "No," I cut her off. "He made a choice, and now I'm making mine." As I showed them out, a commotion in the hallway caught our attention. Devon stumbled towards us, clearly drunk. "Evie," he slurred, reaching for me. "I knew you'd take me back. We belong together." I stepped back, my heart pounding. "Devon, you need to leave." His face darkened. "Leave? I just got here. I'm not going anywhere without you." As he lunged forward, I felt a surge of panic, but before he could reach me, another figure appeared. "I believe the lady asked you to leave." Preston's steady voice cut through the tension. Devon's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who actually cares about Evie," Preston replied, moving protectively in front of me. The situation was escalating rapidly. Devon, fueled by alcohol and jealousy, took a swing at Preston. In the chaos that followed, I found myself caught between my past and my potential future. As security arrived to handle Devon and his parents looked on in horror, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was the moment. The final break from my old life. Turning to Preston, I saw concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, realizing I had a choice to make. I could let this incident drag me back into the drama and pain of my past, or I could embrace the future I'd been building. "I will be," I said, taking his hand. "Let's get out of here." As we walked away, leaving the echoes of my past behind, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I was ready to face it on my own terms. The weeks following Devon's drunken outburst flew by in a whirlwind of change. Preston and I had grown closer, our relationship deepening with each passing day. His unwavering support and genuine affection were a balm to my battered heart. "Move in with me," Preston said one evening as we sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. You've come too far to look back now. I hesitated, old fears bubbling up. Are you sure? My life's been such a mess. His eyes serious. Evie, you're the strongest person I know. Your mess is part of what makes you amazing. His words touched something deep within me, and I found myself nodding. Okay, let's do it. The next few days were a flurry of packing and planning. As I sorted through my belongings, deciding what to keep and what to let go, it felt like I was shedding the last remnants of my old life. On moving day, as we carried the last box into Preston's, our apartment, my phone rang. It was Fiona, her voice tight with worry. Evie, you need to get to the office. Now. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? It's that big account you've been working on. Devon's here, and he's threatening to tank the deal if you don't talk to him. I felt the blood drain from my face. This account was my chance to prove myself, to reclaim my place in the company, and Devon knew it. Preston saw my expression and was immediately at my side. What is it? I explained quickly, my mind racing. I have to go, I said, grabbing my keys. I'm coming with you, Preston insisted, but I shook my head. No, I need to handle this myself, for good. The drive to the office was a blur. When I arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. I could hear Devon's raised voice before I even entered the conference room. There she is, he exclaimed as I walked in, his words slightly slurred. The woman of the hour. I took in the scene. My colleagues' uncomfortable faces, the client's confusion, and Devon's disheveled appearance. This was my moment of truth. Devon, we need to talk. Privately, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He smirked. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of everyone. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Fine, you need to leave. Now. What we had is over, and you have no right to interfere with my life or my work. Devon's face darkened. No right? I made you who you are. Without me, you're nothing. His words, once so cutting, now felt hollow. I looked around the room, at the faces of people who had supported me, believed in me. Then I turned back to Devon. You're wrong, I said, my voice growing stronger. I am everything I am in spite of you, not because of you, and I won't let you take that away from me. I turned to the clients, who were watching with a mix of shock and interest. I apologize for this disruption. If you'll give me a chance, I'd like to show you why our proposal is the best choice for your company. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, to my surprise, the lead client nodded. We're listening, Miss Harper. As I launched into my presentation, I felt a surge of confidence. Devon's protests faded into the background as I spoke passionately about the project, my ideas flowing effortlessly. When I finished, the clients were smiling. We're impressed, Miss Harper. You've got yourself a deal. The room erupted in applause. As security finally escorted a protesting Devon out, Fiona rushed to hug me. You did it, Evie. You really did it. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of my colleagues' congratulations, I felt a profound shift. This wasn't just a professional victory. It was a personal one. I had faced my past, stood my ground, and come out stronger. As the excitement died down and I gathered my things to leave, I found myself both exhilarated and exhausted. The day's events had pushed me to my limits, forcing me to confront my deepest fears and insecurities. But as I stepped out of the office, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. My future was my own, and I was ready to embrace it fully. The soft glow of fairy lights illuminated our backyard, transforming it into a magical oasis. I stood before the full-length mirror in our bedroom, smoothing down my simple white dress. It wasn't the elaborate gown I'd worn for my first wedding, but it felt infinitely more me. A gentle knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Come in, I called. My mother, Henrietta, entered, her eyes immediately welling with tears. Oh, Evie, she breathed. You look beautiful. I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. Thanks, Mom. She approached, taking my hands in hers. This is what it's all about, Evie. Family, love, and new beginnings, she said, her voice thick with emotion. As we embraced, I felt the weight of the past few years lift from my shoulders. The pain, the struggles, the moments of despair, they had all led me here, to this moment of pure joy. Are you ready? My father asked, appearing at the doorway. I took a deep breath and nodded. More than ever. As we made our way to the backyard, I could hear the soft murmur of conversation from our small gathering of friends and family. This wasn't a grand affair, but it was perfect. The moment I stepped into view, I locked eyes with Preston. His face lit up with a smile so bright it rivaled the twinkling lights surrounding us. In that instant, I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. As I walked down the makeshift aisle, memories of the past year flashed through my mind. The betrayal, the surgery, the long road to recovery, both physically and emotionally. But with each step, those painful memories faded, replaced by newer, happier ones. Preston's unwavering support, Fiona's friendship, my parents' love, and my own rediscovered strength. When I reached Preston, he took my hands in his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. As we exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever life might bring, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was a whole new book. The celebrant's voice rang out, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." As Preston's lips met mine, cheers erupted from our guests. I could hear Fiona's enthusiastic whooping and my parents' joyful sobs. During the reception, as Preston and I swayed to our first dance, I caught sight of a familiar face at the edge of the yard. Devon stood there, looking lost and uncertain. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I felt a flicker of something. Not regret or longing, but a quiet acknowledgement of our shared past and the vastly different paths we now walked. He nodded once, a silent gesture of, "What? Apology? Acceptance?" Then he turned and disappeared into the night. I tightened my arms around Preston, feeling grateful for the journey that had led me to this moment. "Thank you," I whispered. He pulled back slightly, his brow furrowed in confusion. "For what?" "For loving me, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for being patient while I found my way back to who I really am." Preston's eyes softened. "Evie, loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. You're the strongest, most incredible person I know. I'm the lucky one here." As the night wore on, surrounded by the warmth of friends and family, I found myself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year. I had faced my deepest fears, confronted my past, and emerged stronger than I ever thought possible. Looking around at the smiling faces of my loved ones, Fiona raising her glass in a toast, my parents beaming with pride, and Preston gazing at me with pure adoration, I realized that this was more than just a happy ending. It was a new beginning, full of promise and possibility. I had shattered the echoes of my past and built something beautiful from the pieces. Leaned to Preston's embrace, I knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, I was ready to face them, not as the woman I once was, but as the woman I had become. This was my story, my life, and for the first time in forever, I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring.